Cloud Diagnostics is a global clinical pathology practice that distributes world-class cell and molecular diagnostics to developing countries. My name is Dexter and I'm one of the founders, and I'm going to share with you today some of our ideas. In the traditional clinical pathology practice, both data generation and clinical interpretation are centralized to a shared geographic location as mandated by the federal government. However, this setup does not scale well outside of the local community. Therefore, to build a global pathology practice, we have to operate in developing countries with a relaxed or even absent regulatory environment, and where there is a great need for even the most basic of cell and molecular diagnostics. By completely decoupling data generation from its interpretation, we can then build a clinical pathology practice based on modern cloud infrastructure that scales globally. As we identify new markets with a clinical need for accurate cell and molecular diagnostics, we can easily add new labs with qualified local staff to generate this clinical data. This is so because as lab equipment and workflows become more reliable, robust, and streamlined, the limiting factor is no longer the data generation, but in fact the clinical interpretation of that data by highly trained clinical pathologists. But beyond matching the data generation capacity with skilled pathologists, we will build our pathology interpretation network independently of the demand. So our pathologists will be able to rapidly circulate a difficult case, for instance, to a whole global community of highly skilled experts, which brings a precise quantitative clinical interpretation that is just not possible in the traditional clinical lab. And moreover, to ensure accurate diagnostics, we are seeking clear certification to ensure best laboratory practices. This stamp of quality will attract large customers like international pharmaceutical companies that may require our diagnostic services for clinical trials. So where would we begin such an ambitious plan for a global clinical pathology practice? We're going to start in the Caribbean island of Trinidad, where my wife, Alicia, and I were born and raised. Over the last year, Alicia and I have been working with the Ministry of Health to try to modernize the diagnostic capabilities in our country. In fact, our whole Cloud DX idea blossomed from learning how receptive the Ministry of Health was to bringing first world diagnostics back home. Moreover, there's a booming private healthcare system that we can also serve. Once we can show a successful proof of concept in Trinidad, a market we are comfortable with and very familiar with, we can continue to other developing markets around the world, such as the rest of the Caribbean, as well as South America, Africa, and Asia. And because we are targeting developing countries, the cost to operate a full-service clinical lab is trivial relative to that of the United States, which also helps us to rapidly grow our clinical pathology practice across the globe. And finally, we have a group of talented founders with unique backgrounds and technical expertise to execute on this vision. Lee Schroeder and I both trained at Stanford's Clinical Pathology Residency Program, and Lee will serve as our medical director. My wife, Alicia, is a cell and molecular biologist by training, and she will serve as our chief of operations and help us to penetrate the wide-open Trinidad clinical laboratory market. And finally, I've been doing big data analysis in genomics and computational biology for over a decade, and I will build the back-end cloud infrastructure to facilitate the global practice of clinical pathology.